When people think of horror on the PlayStation, the first game that comes to mind is usually Resident Evil. That game set the standard in 1996 and defined survival horror for a whole generation. But 3 years later, another game came along that didn't just try to copy it. It approached fear from another angle, a slower, stranger, more unsettling angle. That game was Silent Hill. To see why it worked, you have to look at where it came from, who made it, and the role Konami was playing at the time. Konami didn't start as a game company at all. Back in 1969, they were repairing jukeboxes in Osaka. Over time, they shifted into arcade machines, and by the 80s, they were a giant Japanese in gaming. They had games like Castlevania, Contra, and Metal Gear. They proved they could hit in almost every genre. By the mid-90s, survival horror was brand new. Resident Evil had been a breakout success. It sold millions and it created a genre. It proved horror could be a commercial hit and Konami wanted in. But they didn't hand the job to their top talent. Instead, they pulled together a group of developers who hadn't really found their place inside the company. People shuffled between projects, not the stars, but the leftovers, and that team became known as Team Silent. At first, Konami told them to make something for Western tastes, a game that could sell well overseas. But as development went on, the team leaned into their own vision. They didn't want to just copy Capcom. They wanted something slower, something more psychological, something that felt like a dream turning into a nightmare. The PlayStation wasn't built to render a full town with long drawn distances. Popping would have ruined the mood, so the team covered everything in fog. What started as a performance fix became the defining look of the game. That thick mist hid the hardware problems, and it made every step forward uncertain. You never knew what was waiting a few feet ahead. The same happened with lighting. The PlayStation couldn't handle big open lighting systems. The answer was a flashlight, one narrow beam cutting through the dark. In the player's hands, it became terrifying. You only saw what was right in front of you and everything else disappeared into black. Even the environments had unexpected routes. The elementary school in Silent Hill was modeled after the school from Kindergarten Cop. The team used American films as references for architecture, then twisted them into something more menacing. Familiar buildings turned alien. Team Silent kept finding ways to turn practical fixes into artistic choices. Practically the same thing happened with the monsters. They weren't designed for gore, but they were built to unsettle you. Some early designs looked too much like children, which drew the attention of rating boards and had to be toned down before release. Others were vaguely human shapes, twisted into something unnatural. The look and feel came heavily from the 1990 film Jacob's Ladder. The twitching, distorted movements, the blurring of reality and hallucination, the sense that what you're seeing might not even be real. That movie was in the DNA of the whole project. And then there was Akira Yamaoka. He originally joined to handle sound effects, but when the team needed someone to do the music, he volunteered. His approach was raw. Industrial noise, static, metalscaping, sounds that felt hostile, not traditional songs, but an atmosphere. And when he did bring in the melody, it was soft and melancholy. The contrast made it hit even harder, and without his work, Silent Hill wouldn't have been half the game it became. The game opens up with Harry Mason driving into Silent Hill with his daughter Cheryl. There's a crash and he wakes up alone while she's gone. Harry isn't a cop or a soldier, he's just a father searching for his child. The lack of training defines the whole experience because you don't feel prepared and you don't feel safe. The town itself feels alive, streets swallowed in fog, doors locked everywhere, shapes moving in the distance. And there's the shift. Silent Hill doesn't just stay one way, but it changes. Floors peeled away into rusted grates, walls drip with blood, lights flicker out. The other world, as players came to call it, is even more hostile than the foggy streets above. The story digs into cults, rituals and trauma. It was heavier than most games of its time, and it didn't hand players easy answers. Instead, it left them in the middle of the nightmare and asked them to piece it together. On the surface, Silent Hill looks a lot like Resident Evil. It has a third-person view, tank controls, inventory management, and exploring buildings and solving puzzles. But the differences are where it finds its identity. Harry's combat is clumsy, swinging a pipe feels awkward, guns aim slowly, and you never feel powerful. That tension makes every encounter matter, because you are surviving, you don't dominate. Exploration is where the game shines. The map system is one of the smartest features it has. Harry marks doors that are locked, he scribbles notes, he circles points of interest. It feels like you're investigating alongside him. The puzzles can be clever but also frustrating. Some are remembered as unfair, but that confusion adds to the mood. You're not supposed to feel in control, but you're supposed to feel uneasy. And when you combine the fog, the flashlight, the monsters and the sound design, the result is constant tension. When Silent Hill released in 1999, the reviews were strong. It didn't have the same pop culture explosion as Resident Evil, but critics praised its atmosphere and sound. The graphics were rough, polygonal characters, stiff animations, but the fog and darkness covered for it. Reviewers called the game unique, disturbing and unforgettable. It sold especially well in the United States, which had been Konami's target from the beginning. And as the years passed, its reputation grew. Fans began calling it one of the two pillars of survival horror. If Resident Evil was about external threats, Silent Hill was about what's inside your head. The success kept Team Silent together. They went on to create Silent Hill 2, a game many still consider one of the greatest horror titles ever made. Silent Hill 3 continued the story of the first game, while Silent Hill 4 tried something completely different. Eventually, Konami dissolved the team. Later games were outsourced to Western studios with mixed results. Some were decent, but most missed what made the originals work. Even so, the first Silent Hill still matters. It showed that horror didn't have to rely on blood and jump scares. It could use mood, sound and suggestion. It could get under your skin without ever raising its voice. Revisiting the original Silent Hill isn't easy. There is no modern remaster. If you want to play it, you will need a PlayStation disc or an emulator. The graphics have aged, characters look blocky, and environments look flat. But the design still works. The fog still makes every step uncertain. The radio still spikes your nerves with static. Even with dated controls and visuals, the atmosphere holds up, and the fear is still there. Silent Hill wasn't supposed to be a hit. It came from a team Konami didn't see as special, but those developers turned every limitation into something unforgettable. The fog, the clumsy combat, the oppressive sound. What began as technical fixes became the elements that defined it. Decades later, the game still resonates, because atmosphere doesn't age the way graphics do, and dread doesn't need cutting-edge hardware to work. Step into that fog with only a flashlight and a radio hissing in your pocket and you realize something important. This isn't just a horror game, it's a nightmare that doesn't let you go.